All right, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back again. There's just 3 or 4 minutes till we start. But as usual, it's good to be with you guys, and just sit tight and we'll get our review session in place in just a bit. Hi, Stephen. Morning. Hey, Kylie. Just a couple minutes. Okay, another minute to go. Hey, Sloan. Good morning. Amanda, welcome back. Hi, everybody. Good to see you guys. Nina, Ryan. Hello. Okay, then. So let me just start the meeting, I guess, because we're here at 9 a.m. Good morning, everybody, and good to be with you guys one more time as we finish out the last review session. And you all know the plan, basically. We're going to go over more study guide questions here today with whatever time we have, and then Tuesday afternoon from 1:30 to 4, that's when you'll have the final exam. I'm going to be done with grading the paper that you guys have submitted either later tonight or tomorrow afternoon. But anyway, it'll be done within the next 24 hours. And then I'll post the, or I mean, if it's tomorrow afternoon, it could be like 28 hours or something. But in any case, it's going to be done before midday tomorrow at the latest. And then I'll be sending out a notification to the students that you can all just inquire with an email to me so you can have a grade check and know all your other scores and your current standing as you go into the final. So just letting you know that the papers are almost done. I'm done with the majority of them, and then I will be finished with the remainder tonight or tomorrow morning, and then I'll send off this notification. So you guys through the weekend can be emailing me for your scores on that. and then you'll be on to the final. So we all know, I think, the final is Tuesday from 1:30 to 4 p.m., and it's going to consist of questions that are taken from the study guide that we all have. So as we were doing on Wednesday, I just turn it over to you to guide us through whatever questions you think we should go into, and we'll try to discuss them as a group. Me and your classmates will try our best to assist with any questions you might have. So go ahead whenever you're ready, and then we'll just go over some more study guide questions. So that's about it. And as usual, if you have any other questions, comments, anything at all, please do leave them in the chat, and we'll just go over it as we get it. So it's been a good semester with you guys. Really been nice getting to know you guys a little bit, working with you, helping you learn some stuff in philosophy. But we do have this one last piece of business. So let me know what questions you want to talk about. Hey, Dimitri, Xianyan, Ryan, Alex, Marin, Eloise, Eric, and everybody else. Okay, so you say, Stephen, since we have more time for this exam, should our answers be longer or the same as the midterm? I think that the standard is just the same pretty much. I mean, I don't necessarily think you should have had short answers for the midterm. You have to just write the most complete and detailed answer that you can in any case. So the standard doesn't really change to me. How many questions will there be on the final? Okay, good question. So, the midterm, I think it was you had to answer 6 out of a set of 10. But since you have more than double the time, I'm going to add just a couple additional questions. I'm not going to make it like twice as many, but I will have you answer, I think, 8. So I think what I'll do is make it be 8 out of 11 or 8 out of 12. So that'll be the format. And so instead of answering 6, yeah, you'll answer 8, a couple more. But on balance, it's still a better ratio of time to question number than what you had on the midterm. So 8, basically. But you'll be able to select from a question bank that has like 8, 11, or 12. Okay, so whatever next, you can let me know. And we'll just take them as they come. Hi, good morning, Ellie. So I would say, if you don't have it, please do pull up your study guide, because you'll need to refer to it as you look at it to tell me which questions we should review. And, I'm just waiting for you to let me know which ones, just the same as we did Wednesday. So if not already pulled up, then please do retrieve your document for the final exam study guide. You can find it in our Canvas announcements, or if you've already downloaded it. But that's all. Just let me know which questions. Morning, Nicole. Is this the psychological phenomenon known as diffusion of responsibility, where you're in a large group and everyone assumes that someone else will do something, so nobody does it? Noah, you ask, could we have an example of a good answer? How long they have to be? How many examples or counter arguments should entail to be considered sufficient? Well, if you give me a question, then maybe, yes, I could do that. In general, though, Noah, it has to be as long and detailed as possible. Until you've exhausted all the information. So there's no set length, but I would say reach for the stars. Just keep writing. Just never stop. Just keep writing on and on and on until you can't say anything else. But anyway, if you have a real question about a specific one, then we can actually get a direct kind of example. But as a general matter, I say length is better. Long paragraph, maybe as a sort of, I guess, baseline. But these are meta questions. These are questions about questions, but they're not the questions. So let us deal with the first order questions, and then the higher order questions will be answered by the way we reply to them. Okay, so 38 and 39. Thanks, Claire. The lifeboat example. Will you get points deducted for answering more than 8? No, you won't get points deducted for answering more than 8, but the thing is, I won't grade more than 8. If you have answered more than 8 and you've not given me directions which 8 to score, I'm just going to score the first 8 and ignore the rest, because I'm not going to grade, like, say, 11 and then give you the credit for the 8 best answers. No. So the only thing you can do is, if you choose to answer more than 8, which you could, then you would have to self-eliminate by crossing out or just deleting the responses that you didn't want scored. So you can try to answer more than them and then evaluate on your own which ones you thought were the best, and then tell me which of the 8 to grade, or which of the total to grade. But the policy is that I'm grading 8 questions per exam, and if you wanted to answer more than 8, then you have to just direct me which 8 to do. So Claire, let's see about 38 and 9. Garrett Hardin. In Garrett Hardin's article, Lifeboat Ethics, the Case Against Helping the Poor, he gives this lifeboat example. So somebody tell me what the whole lifeboat scenario was. There's some things that symbolize things and represent things in this example. So what is the whole lifeboat thing? We say that there are lifeboats. What do they represent or stand for in the example? And then there's some other characters in the example that stand for other aspects of the whole debate about international assistance to the global poor. So let me hear a few things about the lifeboat hypothetical of Garrett Hardin. Just gather your thoughts, notes, memories, whatever, and let me hear it. Okay, Stephen, the people on the lifeboat represent first world countries like the United States, and the people outside it are struggling are third world countries. Okay, so in the example, right, he says, imagine that each wealthy nation of the world is symbolized by a lifeboat floating in the ocean. And, lifeboat United States, for example, would be one of the lifeboats because we're one of the wealthy first world industrialized nations. And there would be a lifeboat for each other, wealthy first world country. If it was England, Germany, France, or, Japan, different first world nations are symbolized by these boats. It's a metaphor. The people that are passengers on the boats are supposed to represent the citizens of those wealthy countries. So like me and you would be passengers on Lifeboat USA. Now, in the example, there's also people who are floating around in the water that are not on a boat and that are in danger of drowning and succumbing to the waves. And that's supposed to be the symbol of the international poor that are like starving and hungry. In the example, he says that the lifeboat has a capacity for 60, and that it currently holds 50, but that out there in the water, there's 100 people that are in the dangerous situation of not having a boat to stand on. So if you have 100 in the water, 50 on the boat, the capacity of the boat is 60, then there's really not enough room to take everybody. And therefore, he says, if you tried to help all, you'd capsize the boat, and now the boat can't provide for anybody, even a small number, even a more moderate number. If you bring on 10 and then maximize the capacity of the boat, then the boat is filled to its maximum capacity, and that compromises the safety margin that you would have, which he thinks is another cost of bringing on even a small amount. So to Hardin anyway, the right response would be to not allow anybody on the boat and to vigilantly guard against those that would board without authorization. And this is supposed to be his way of framing the issue of whether we should be helping the international poor. It's kind of like the big message is we'd like to, but there's no realistic way to do it without undermining our own interests or even destroying our own prosperity. And so to that extent, he says it's not wise or advisable for people that are currently citizens of the first world, passengers on the boat, to do much for the people that are out there because it's so numerous in comparison to what we could actually provide. Okay, so you've got this lifeboat example of Hardin, which he uses to try and make the case that we don't have any obligation to help the global poor. And the next question, Claire, you asked was 39. So with 39, there's another topic in Garrett Hardin's paper where he talks about the tragedy of the commons. So someone just tell me, what is the stated principle of the tragedy of the commons? Good morning, Connor. Tragedy of the commons, what's that? Someone just say that and let's go with it. What is the tragedy of the commons? Common resources for all are destined for failure. Okay, that's good, Ryan. Can you tell me the basic reasons why he thinks they would fail? Why will a public resource that anyone can take from, why would that fail and not be sustainable? You say they'll fail. That's right. He does claim this, but he gives more reasons why. Because they're overused and poorly maintained. All right. Yes. And he says that's not the case with private resources. With private resources, they're well maintained and not overutilized. So it's like his warning not to be supportive of commons, public resources, and in particular, he's highlighting and targeting the World Food Bank as the commons that he thinks we shouldn't be supportive of because it's going to fail just like others do. Now, he gave an example to illustrate his point. Can you remember or tell me what you thought the example was that he made here? There's something about what if we made this thing public, and then he tries to explain how it would quickly be ruined. Someone notice or mention to me, if you could, what the example was. Well, there's the World Food Bank, right, Stephen? But that's not the example. He gives a hypothetical example. The World Food Bank is real. But he says, imagine hypothetically that we took some resource, made it public, and then he explains how that would quickly be ruined because it would become public. So what do you think is the example? There is an example. If you read these articles, the information, it would be memorable. You would remember the example because you read about it, or at least if you came to the lecture. Okay, an acre of farmland. There you go, Stephen, right. An acre of farmland. So take 1 acre of farmland that people can use for farm animals. Make it public. What would happen to it? Well, everyone would come and bring their animals to it, so it would be overgrazed. But also, since no one personally owns it, they wouldn't do anything to make sure it's clean, tidy, and well maintained. So therefore, we have a recipe for a failed acre of farmland. Too many animals on it, no one doing their part to maintain it, and therefore it's quickly destroyed. But if it was a privately owned acre, the owner of the acre would be invested in it through their own expense, and therefore they wouldn't want it to be ruined. That means that if you own it privately, you're not going to overload it with too many animals, and you are going to maintain its sustainable upkeep, because if you didn't, you would have a direct loss. So public resources are not going to work. Private ones will. Think of the example of the acre of farmland. And then he summarizes this to say, so therefore, we should not support the World Food Bank, which is just another commons. A commons where publicly available food resources are given to the third world, which they will draw from with no limits, but then also not do anything to wean themselves off of it through these high reproduction rates. And then inevitably, we will get, a worse outcome. So there you go. Don't worry about this person. I don't know who it is, but they're not with us, so they're gone. But back to what we were saying. Another question. Let me know the next one. So that's the whole tragedy of the commons. It's about public versus private resources. He's warning us against public resources. It's part of his larger argument against helping the poor. 69, Stephen. Okay, let me take a quick look. Right, so only do what it's been programmed to do. Yeah, so what do you think is the response to that? 69 says, machines can only do what they've been programmed to do, and that's why they don't have actual consciousness. Right, Lady Lovelace's objection. That's what it's dealing with, yes. But what was Turing's response? First of all, okay, so if this question were selected, you'd want to quickly summarize the objection itself, and then you'll be able to say in context how he replies to it. So Turing's arguing that machines could have consciousness if they pass the Turing test. And Lady Lovelace's objection says, well, it wouldn't really be consciousness, because even if it looks like they're giving realistic human-type answers, they can only really do what they've been programmed to do, and that's not like a human. So that must not be the real thing when it comes to consciousness. What did Turing say back to that? What was Turing's answer to this criticism? That, the machine cannot do anything other than what it's been programmed to do. And according to the objection, humans are not like that. And so this is the difference which distinguishes them from us and shows they don't have consciousness. Stephen, Turing replies by asserting that the distinction raised is not really relevant or existent since we ourselves are unable to act on something. Since we are ourselves unable to act on. So no, you're saying it wrong, Stephen. What do you mean when you say that we are unable to act on something external to us? Okay, I guess maybe I'm seeing what you're trying to say. But rather, I think you're putting it the wrong way. We are only able to act on something or consider information that has come from an external source. Maybe when you say external, you mean something that we've not yet encountered. So I guess I could see the phrasing, but the right way to put it is that according to Turing, a human being, a human brain, is also the same as the computer because we cannot do anything except for what we've been programmed to do. We can only act on or consider information that we've received from an external source. So like you can't speak language until your linguistic community inputs it into you like as a baby and as a growing child. You can't play an instrument until you've actually like learned the material about how to do it first. You can't discuss like the plot line of a novel or film if you've never seen it yet. So you are like a computer that can only do things you've been programmed to do because you have to be exposed to information that's coming from outside of you before you can even reflect on it, act on it, or do anything with it. So that's the right point, yes. The distinction raised is not really relevant, you say, Stephen, or existence, since we ourselves are unable to act on something external to us. Yeah, so I mean, you're right about the point that the distinction doesn't exist because we're the same as the computers. Just the way you're putting how we are the same. You know, we're the same because we also are limited in terms of only being able to reflect on information that's provided from somewhere else. And so that's like the equivalent of a computer that's only able to act according to instructions that it has been given from a programmer that's external to it. Okay. So what next? Can I go to the next question? Whatever you think is good. The more questions you cover, the better, I guess, you'll be. It's totally up to you which questions we cover. So, you know, just let me know which ones. 54? Okay, Eric. Explain the idea that people have temporal parts. Okay, so according to the space-time theory, which is implied by the work of Einstein, objects and people have both spatial and temporal parts. So let's first say, what is the definition of a temporal part? What's a temporal part of an object? Because, you know, according to the theory, you have these parts, but what are they? You got to meet me at least halfway by saying something, and then I can add to it. Yes, so good, Eric. It's an object at a single moment in time. You can think about a temporal part as like the individual moment of time that a person's image is shown, like in a photo. So it's just one individual instant of time in an individual's existence, whether it's a person or an object. I mean, so there's temporal parts of objects, but since we are like, you know, the main things that we're interested in when we talk about anything, I guess we'd think mostly about a temporal part of a person. So it's an object at a single moment of time. And so according to space-time theory, all the temporal parts exist, including the past, present, and future. So all the moments that relative to you currently would be considered the future or the past. All those temporal parts exist. So it's not that only the present one exists. All the moments are just as real as this moment is. So future moments and past moments already exist. They've always existed. This moment that you're experiencing now has always existed, even before now your consciousness is aware of it. So the temporal parts all exist in space-time. Therefore, all moments of past, present, and future exist like simultaneously. Okay, so it's an object at a single moment in time. It is implied that the temporal parts have to exist because of the relativity of simultaneity. If there's no objective fact about what moment is past, present, or future in a linear time sequence, then we just have to say they all exist at once. And so in the same way, you're an object which has spatial parts, which are just like physical parts that occupy space, but then you also have temporal parts, which are the moments of you that occupy time. And there are as many temporal parts of you as there are moments that you exist. If you show a space-time diagram, a temporal part would be like a cross-section drawn through the time axis on the diagram. Okay, so you have temporal parts. Let me know what you think next. Would be a good question. We have good attendance, but we need good engagement. Let's get the questions asked, because the whole point is to ask questions and to give those responses. Otherwise, what are we doing? We need to get the questions in there, but I'm not going to ask them because, I mean, you know, you're the ones who need to take the test. So let's tell me rather, what topics we should go into. But I'm ready to help. Just let me know what I can help with. $71, Chase. Okay. Turing's views on whether machines could think. So who thinks they could tell me what is Turing's attitude about that? Could a machine ever have consciousness? Could a machine ever think, according to Alan Turing, who wrote Computing Machinery and Intelligence? Could they? If so, what would it take? Just answer the question. What did Turing say about whether machines could think? Could they? According to him? I know it wasn't too long ago that we talked about it, so I'm sure it's fresh in your memory. Does Turing think that it's possible for a machine to have thought or consciousness? Stephen, yes. Simply, it's a matter of time. If the machine succeeds 50% of the time during the Turing test, which he believed would occur, well, not around 2000, no. He said by 2000, the machines would have about a 30% rate of failure for the interrogator. But then eventually we would get to 50%. But yes, so if we get to a point in time where a machine causes the interrogator to mistake the identity about half of the time, and he thought we'd be well on the way to that by the year 2000, but not all the way there yet. Anyway, when we get to that point, then the computers, he says, have consciousness. When they pass the Turing test, they could think just as well as humans. Yes, Claire, but there's more complexity to the answer. It's not just like yes is the answer. I mean, it is yes to be like brief, but why or when? It would have to be when they pass the Turing test, meaning that if you've conducted these imitation game Turing tests and we see a machine that's able to cause the interrogator to get the wrong identity about half the time, that would be the standard. That would be the criteria for machines having consciousness. So yes, it's going to happen, he thinks, at a date in the future when machines pass the Turing test. So you would simply say that. You'd say that he believes it's possible when they pass the Turing test, maybe say how the Turing test works, and then you have your answer. yes, he thinks they could have consciousness if they pass the Turing test. And, you know, the Turing test involves the interrogator trying to determine which one's a machine, which one's a human. And if he gets these identification results wrong about half the time in trials, then that would be a thinking machine according to the Turing's way of looking at consciousness, which I guess is just when something exhibits behavior that is indistinguishable from the kind of interaction you'd have with a person. Okay, so what's next? Now, Stephen, you say if the machine succeeds 50% of the time. If there's any students here that didn't read the article, they might look at that and they might think, oh, so the machine is the thing that has to answer the questions, or the machine is the thing that has to make the determination of identity. It's the interrogator who has to judge which subject he interviewed was a machine and which one was a human. So, to be precise, it's when the interrogator fails about half the time. But anyway, what else? Next question. I mean, it's fair enough. Sometimes people just don't have questions, and that's, nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to just sit here either way until 9:50, and if you have the questions, then we will get to them. But I will say it's a little bit slow. This is not what I'm used to. Usually people are boom, 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 question, question, question. I got this, that, and the other. Unless you think that we've covered enough and you've already got enough review. But I mean, if I was you, I'd be asking more questions. There we go, 79. Okay, Stephen. 79. Desire fulfillment theories, objective list theories. So in Derek Parfit's article, What Makes Someone's Life Go Best, he discussed different theories of self-interest, and he mentioned these two different types of theory of self-interest. So all you got to say is, what makes somebody's life go best according to these different theories? What is what makes someone's life go best on either theory? Desire fulfillment theory, objective list theory. Just got to say what they each are, and how they're different. Compare and contrast those things. So the desire fulfillment theory says to live your best life, you have to do what? What's the goal from that standpoint, from that theory? This was the most recent thing that we lectured on. I mean, just a few days ago. So the desire fulfillment theory, what was that? Stephen? It's just me and you, Stephen? Come on, everybody. Let's get involved and get engaged. What would be best for someone is what would best fulfill their desires, correct? So if you wanted to live, have a good life according to the desire fulfillment theory, then you would try your best to satisfy the things that you have desires for. So whatever those things may be, possessions, experiences, relationships, whatever, travel possibilities, whatever the case may be. If you want something and you don't yet have it, then the desire fulfillment theory would say the best thing is for you to just satisfy as many of the desires that you have as you can. So the things that you want, make them real, achieve them, and then that's the best life. The objective list theory has a different view, though. On the objective list theory, what's the way to live the best life? Or, how does the author kind of frame that? If you want to live a good life on this other account of self-interest, what's good for your self-interest on an objective list theory? Objective list theory. There's no surprise. I said to you when we did the midterm review session, and I've also said before we started this final exam review session, that it's got to be student-driven and student-led, meaning that you have to provide most of the information, even though in the end it works out in practice where I actually do give most of the information, but you have to at least help to stimulate it by supplying something, because it's not right for the professor to just, give everything when you're not trying to, meet them halfway. So you do have to tell me what you think is the objective list theory so that I can then add detail from there. Just, you have notes, you have the book, you have notes, and all you got to do is refer to them. The information is there, so you just have to report the information. Stephen, certain things are objectively good or bad for us whether or not we want or like those things. So whether or not you like the good things or whether or not you don't want the bad things. And so on the objective list theory, what you should be doing is trying to form like a list of the things that are objectively good and get those things, even if you don't necessarily desire them or find them pleasant. So what could be, for example, things that might appear on this list, things that are not just good subjectively, but that at least some could argue that are objectively good, that are good, period, even if a person doesn't agree with that or feel the same way. What could be some objectively good things? For a human being to have in their life. We're just trying to round out this other part of the question, which is the objective list theory. Stephen, that's right. It does say certain things are objectively good or bad for us, whether we like it or not. And now I'm just asking you to add the detail about what are some things that could be on the objective list. Being healthy, being moral, maybe having children, yeah. So morality, health, wisdom, happy and healthy relationships with people, stuff like that could be considered objectively good. Maybe there's somebody who wants to live like a hermit in the woods and they don't care about having relationships, but I guess on the objective list theory, they're just wrong and they should have those things, whether they like it or not. Maybe there's some people that don't want to become intelligent or read books or, study, but on the objective list theory, they're just wrong and they should get those things even if they don't find it pleasant or enjoyable. So on the objective list theory, you should get things because they're good. And on the desire fulfillment theory, things are good because you desire them. So the objective list theory is not driven by the person's individual desires. It's based on some kind of, objective idea or conception of the good life that people should live. So for the desire fulfillment theory, just fulfill all your desires, and that's the plan. On the objective list theory, check off all the things on the objective list, and that's the plan, even if you aren't necessarily the most interested in those things, because if that's the case, then you should reorient your desires so that you do care about those things. 53, Claire. Okay, so let me see 53. If a person talks to their past self on the phone, how many people having the conversation? Yeah, so the whole David Lewis time travel article where he talked about a hypothetical scenario where there's a conversation happening between an individual and their past self on the phone. This question just asks how many people was it according to Lewis's essay that are having the conversation. How many would it be? Go back in time, talk to yourself on the phone in the past. So how many people are on the phone? So Claire, you think you know what it's looking for. What do you think it's looking for? Yeah, so how many people are on the phone in the conversation that one has with their past self when they time travel and talk to themselves in the past? How many people are on the phone having the conversation? In the essay David Lewis wrote, there's a specific answer. So there you go, Claire. In the principles of the space-time theory, no, you're getting it wrong. It's not two different people. Okay, so wrong. How many people is it? It is one. So what are the two things then, if not two people? There's two things having a conversation, but they're not two people. It's one person, but it is two what of the one person? They're connected by their memories, yes. But let's get the question properly answered. How many? So there's one person, but there's two separate temporal parts of the person, correct? Temporal parts. One temporal part from the earlier part of the individual's timeline is receiving the call. Another temporal part from later on in the individual's timeline is placing the call. But these are not two different people because they're connected by psychological continuity. Yes, they're two different parts of the same person, right? Two different parts of the same person, but not two separate people. So like Claire, Stephen, or anybody else, if I'm talking to you, we're two different people because I don't have any memory of being you, obviously, because we're two different people. But if I was talking to myself when I was like, I don't know, 18 years old, then I would remember being the 18-year-old version of me. I would remember being the person who received the call. So there's no memorial psychological continuity between two separate people. But in time travel scenarios, there would obviously be that because you're talking to yourself in the past, not a different person in the past. Okay, so there you go. One person, two temporal parts. And he thinks that's the more sensible explanation because after all, you have a memorial psychological connection to the other stage with whom you're interacting in that case. Okay, so let's keep going. We still have some time for a couple more questions. To be fair, maybe we just covered a lot on Wednesday, and so you're kind of satisfied with the level of review and you don't have as many questions today. That's all right. But my priority as a teacher is to just try and help you as much as I can, and therefore I'm always going to try to emphasize and urge for you to get the most out of these review sessions because they can be very productive. And there's a replay that serves as a permanent record, and the chat also serves as a record that you can refer to. So the more stuff that's in the meeting, the better. That's why I'm trying to just push that we get as many questions during this time period as we can. If you're shy, if you feel like it's awkward, sorry for that. But this is business. We have a class to run and we have to finish strong. So that's why I'm trying to get these questions out on the chat. But anyway, next question, whatever it might be. Like the asking of a question is a simple matter. It's maybe tougher to answer it, but simply to ask, what about this one? That's a simple thing. So, all I can assume though is that you're just confident. You have all that information that you need, so you don't need much more. Yeah, so it's all good. I mean, if you don't want to ask more questions, that's fine. But I would say you should, obviously, with the time that we still have, 10 minutes of class. But, if you don't ask them, then I guess that's that. Alex, 48. The concept of time moving, why is that a paradox, according to Ted Sider? So when people say time moves, Ted Sider says this is actually something that's paradoxical. Why? What's the paradox about saying that time moves? Why is that a confusing or almost circular statement, that time moves? It has to do with because motion itself depends on something. So maybe that's a little hint that can jog your memory. What is it about saying time moves that is such a paradox? Okay, there you go, Stephen. Because motion itself is defined and is reliant on the concept of time. Yes. Time is needed to define motion, and motion requires time to be defined, which creates the paradox. Exactly. So for an object to move, you hearing me? If for an object to move, it has to be in different places at different times. Displacement over time, that's what movement is. So if this hand moves from this point in space to this other point in space, what happens is that it's altering its position over time. So like if you had a clock and you watched like the seconds running, you'd see that like as time is passing, the hand is in different spatial positions. So to move, an object has to be in different places at different times. That means that the concept of time is built right into the definition of movement. So if time moves, this would be a circular definition because it would mean that time is in different places at different times. But that's, using the concept of time in the definition of how it moves. So that would be a circular definition. How can time move with reference to time itself? It is time. Is there a second order time within which the first order time moves? In that case, we would be on to an infinite regress. So you see this discussed by Ted Sider in his article Time. And that was the paradox. Yeah, it's a paradox to say that time moves because motion is defined with reference to time, meaning that objects move through space by being in different places at different times. So saying of time that it moves would be saying that it moves by being in different places at different times, which then invokes the concept in its own definition. Okay, so that's 48. And what's next? Still have a good amount for maybe one or two more if we can get them in. 73, Eric? Okay. Plato's analogy between the soul and the state. Okay, so in Plato's Republic, he offers us a conception of the ideal state, and then he says this is kind of like also parallel to the ideal conception of the human life. And the Republic and the human soul are kind of similar in his account. Each one has three different separate parts, and they're similar structurally, and they're supposed to work together in a similar way. So what are the three parts of the Republic? And then we can say after that, what are the three parts of the soul? So the three parts of the Republic, according to Plato, were what, and what. Three different divisions of society, according to Plato's work. And that's part of the question. So what were those three different parts of the Republic? Three groups of people that are sorted into these different categories. Yeah, merchants, warriors, and kings, correct. Now, each one has a different job in the Republic and a different function to perform. The merchants are there to produce goods and services to trade for profit. The warriors are there to fight and defend the Republic against threats, either external or internal. And the kings are there to preside over everything and rule, create laws, policies, and also to govern over the warrior class. So in the Republic, we should have each of these different parts doing its job according to its virtue. The merchants should have temperance, the warriors should have courage, and the kings should have wisdom. And they should all be willfully submitting to the proper rule of the king and not trying to challenge him or them. Now, with the soul, there are three parts that it has. And now tell me, what were the three parts of the soul according to the Republic and according to Plato? The three parts of the human soul. We've said that in the Republic, there's merchants, warriors, and kings. And in the soul, there are what three parts? Three parts of the soul? spirited, appetitive, rational. Yes, correct, Eric. So those are three parts of the soul. They're supposed to match basically to the three parts of the Republic. The appetitive part is comparable to the merchants. The spirited part is comparable to the warriors. The rational part is analogous to the kings. The appetitive part of you is the part that has appetites and desires that you want to satisfy. The spirited part is passionate, has a lot of pride, wants to fight and win and be competitive, etc. And then the rational part is the intelligent, wise decision maker that carefully weighs all the factors and tries to make the right call. And according to Plato's view anyway, you should try to get your soul to match the Republic. You should try to get your rational part to run the whole thing, and you should allow each part to defer to that rational part. Each one should act according to its virtue. So your appetitive part should have temperance, self-control. The spirited part should have courage, willingness to face danger when it's needed. And the rational part should have wisdom, the ability to make long-range plans, careful decisions based on the proper evidence. So when you're living your life with your soul in that structure, that's based on the way that the Republic is, then your soul will be going well and your life will go well, just like the Republic would in the same situation. So that would be stuff about number 73. Okay. So we do have enough, maybe 2 minutes or so for like just something small. If you have one more, then maybe we can get to it. If not, that's okay too. Just give you a chance to ask another one if you have it. Any kind of last minute parting shots? 28, Eric? Okay. Why does Kant say that only a good will is good in itself? Yeah, why does he say only a good will is good in itself? Because he compares and contrasts the good will with other qualities that people sometimes have that are usually regarded as good and beneficial, but they're not unconditionally good. So why is it that, for example, he says like intelligence is not unconditionally good? Well, I guess with the time we have, I'll just say other qualities like whatever, intelligence, strength, perseverance, charisma, all of them can be used for evil if the person who has it does not have a good will. So if you've got a really smart person that's like stalking you out to kill you, that's not good intelligence. You don't want that type of person to be that smart because of how dangerous and evil they are. So only a good will is unconditionally good because that means it's just good no matter what. Intelligence, bravery, or any of those other things are not good no matter what. They're only good if the person with it is also a person with a good will. Equip someone that has a bad will with a lot of intelligence and strength, and now you're just enhancing their power to do harm and bad things. So only the good will is unconditionally good. And other things aside from it that people sometimes think of as good qualities are not only good all the time, they're good sometimes, but it depends on the character of the person who has it. Okay, so I mean, that's pretty much it, guys. I want to say again, thanks everybody for sticking with it throughout the whole semester. And I really, really appreciated getting to know you guys a little bit and kind of helping you out through this tour of philosophical topics. I know sometimes it's a little tough, and that's just the nature of the study. There's nothing I can do or that any of us can do about it. This stuff is handed down to us through the generations, and you're just partaking in a big historical process that's been ongoing for thousands of years, the study of philosophy. So I'm glad that I could help you a little bit with it. I know sometimes it's tough, but there's a little tough love in there. I just want you guys to understand the material, and that means that I have to hold you to those standards of accuracy and clarity. But anyway, have a great weekend, and I'll be in touch with you guys in the next day. I will email you guys through Canvas to let you know that the essays are done, and I'll have those grades finished either tonight or tomorrow morning, and then you can check with me throughout the weekend to get your grades for that. So thanks so much, everyone. I really hope you do well. It's been a long year with pandemic and everything, so I really appreciate you guys' hard work, not just in my class, but just getting through school and navigating this tough time. Anyway, it's been great, and this is our last meeting, but hopefully I'll see you guys around on campus back in the fall when we return, I think, fully vaccinated and able to just be in the classroom back where we belong. So thanks again, and if you need anything, just be in touch with me and let me know. Have a great one then, and I'll be talking to you soon as we get through this weekend and I set you up for the final. Okay, guys, have a good one. And by the way, if you have any chance to do those evaluations at some point, I think that they are notifying you about them. They tell us to remind you guys. So if you have a chance, those are always good to fill out for the faculty and for the school. Okay, bye-bye, guys. Take care. Thanks again. See you.